Welcome to the DS9-a-thon, Trek friends! Today, 6 of our 8 episodes are from DS9, and many see major characters coming to major revelations. As we come close to the end of ranking every live-action episode of Star Trek, thanks for joining me. I'm your host. Defending your throne at 33, coup de grace, or what's past is prologue. Yeah, I'm back from the other side of the mirror, so we can have a little chat about Emperor Georgiou. Long may she reign. As Discovery wraps up their unwitting foray into my universe, Philippa attempts to take back her throne from Lorca, with some success in unaliving him in the coolest way possible. But that won't stop his followers from overwhelming her position, which leads Burnham to make the choice to save the Emperor and take her from my universe to this one. Meanwhile, those do-gooders on Discovery are trying to save the Mushroom Kingdom from Her Majesty's fungal-powered Death Star, the Charon. The whole thing wraps up with Stamets jumping them back to this so-called Prime Universe and succeeds, but ends up a little later than they expected. While this one was nominated for an Emmy in sound editing, it should have been nominated for VFX and easily won. This is probably Star Trek's most FX-heavy episode ever, and all of it is done really well. Tell that goody two-shoes version of me, I'm coming for him. Having power thrust upon you at 32, end of the eyes, or tacking into the wind. While the bulk of this episode is well-acted setup leading to the grand finale of DS9, there are 2 scenes that stand out. There's the obvious finale of old Galron Eyes at the hands of Worf. It was a wonderfully natural wrapping up of this corrupt, overly ambitious era in Klingon history. The second major event could have been written by the master of standoffs, Quentin Tarantino, as Damar has to make a choice between his most trusted advisor or someone he's spent his lifetime hating in Kira, and sides with Kira in an effort to save his people. It's the moment he goes from just another Cardassian dictator doing what he has to do for his people to a redeemed and more enlightened person that sees the views he's held his entire life have been terrible and wrong. While he won't last much longer as ruler, Martok, the boy from the Cathalolans who comes not from nobility, has the role of Chancellor thrust upon him by Worf. Definitely feels like Shakespeare, but in the original Klingon. Going all martial law at 30 and 31, wrong thing, right reasons. Or Homefront and Paradise Lost. As the wormhole ominously opens and closes seemingly at random, the fear of a cloaked Dominion fleet becomes real. And after a bombing at a conference on Earth, the Federation calls in its expert on the Dominion, Ben Sisko. He's asked to come back to Earth as head of Starfleet security, along with Odo. His old friend Admiral Layton is setting up what he thinks is required to fight the coming threat. As we see in the seasons to come, Layton was on point with his observations. But what he does with that information in sabotaging Earth's power grid to force martial law and other fascist tactics is against all the things Starfleet has always stood for. The episode almost seems to blueprint for us how the US handled the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. 5 years after this episode came out, Brock Peters as Ben's dad is one of Trek's best actors ever, and his flip-flopping on what the state has a right to do in the name of securing an individual is a well-written and acted facet of these episodes. The darkest part of his plan, aside from being without power, is when Layton orders Notley Abrams to attack the Defiant, bringing proof of the deception to Earth. Layton is probably the biggest gray area in Trek's many badmirals, because he's absolutely right about the Federation not being ready for a war with the Dominion. Though the overall message that fundamentally going fascist at the expense of principles is one of Trek's greatest moral storylines ever. Finding the source of your problems at number 29. Shared trauma. Or broken pieces. While only Picard Season 1 is included in these rankings currently, I think this is not only the peak of Season 1, but probably the best episode of the entire series. Everyone's pain that's been built up through the season comes to a head, and even turns out all comes from the same source, Commodore O. For it was she who caused the destruction on Mars that caused Picard to walk away from Starfleet and simultaneously bring Raffi to rock bottom. She caused Rios's former Captain Vandermeer to unalive Soji's android brother and sister while visiting the USS Ibn Majid. She was also the one to put the images of the admonition in Jurati's head, and we get to see that very rite of passage of the Zhat Vash in the beginning of this episode. Aside from bringing everyone's pain to the forefront and giving the crew of La Sirena a united villain to confront, as Raffi is getting to the bottom of what freaked Rios out by meeting Soji, Santiago Cabrera gets to do some of Trek's best acting, as the multiple holographic versions of him that run the ship, as Raffi brings them together in a brilliant aha moment. Elnor and Seven steal the Borg Cube artifact, but it's really the moments on La Sirena that cement this as Picard's, and one of Trek's best episodes of all time. Laying groundwork at 28, Better in Blue, or Favor the Bold. Why is this setup episode ranked higher than its finale with the mega space battle? The answer is Jeffrey Combs. While the entire cast gives it their all, there are two scenes in particular where Weyoun goes from bubbly to terrifying and back again. The first analyzing Zial's painting, and the second as Dukat tries to show him the minefield coming down. While both provide us with insight into the capabilities of the Vorta, it also gives our friend Jeff time to do some of his best acting in his career. Besides the one-man show, there's a ton of other hard-hitting stuff going on, including Odo having humanoid sex with the female changeling and literally losing himself for 3 days, which doesn't go over well with Kira. Jadzia proves herself to be a capable commander, and the Cisco lays out the plan to take back DS9. While this isn't as flashy as the other episodes in the Dominion in Control of DS9 arc, the character interactions and decisions truly deserve to be in the best of Trek. Getting a different perspective at 27, Dreamer and the Dream, or Far Beyond the Stars. I personally believe that Benny Russell is behind all of Star Trek. This episode has a lot of facets, including looking at how people of color were treated in the mid-20th century, Ben's visions from the prophets, and the possibility that there's a single unseen guy that's responsible for all of Trek, and his name is not Gene Roddenberry. Beyond being in top acting form, this is also Avery Brooks' greatest directing job, even though a happy misstep was him never yelling cut while going through the now infamous scene where Benny has a breakdown and starts flopping on the floor. It's really fun having the entire cast, including recurring characters like Weyoun and Dukat, playing alternate roles without their normal makeup. There's something very surreal about several scenes where Benny sees them as their DS9 characters and then as their 1950s selves. For the second time in this block, Brock Peters nails a performance as both Sisko's dad visiting the station and the preacher/instrument of the prophets that ominously encourages Ben through the episode. This is a very different formula for Star Trek that really works, and is probably Avery Brooks' magnum opus acting moment of his career. The episode earned 3 Emmy nominations in art direction, costumes, and hairstyling, and I'm not sure how it didn't sweep all 3. Knowing Not What You Do at 26, The Dark Times, or Things Past. Can you be part of the problem while desperately trying to be part of the solution? That's the question Odo's secretly been dealing with for years. On the way back from a conference on Bajor, he, Sisko, Dax, and Garrick experienced some strange energy readings, which admittedly isn't the most original catalyst Trek has ever used to set up a plot. Apparently, leftovers from Odo's former changeling matrix form a link between the four and take them back to Odo's early days as constable for the Cardassians on Terok Nor. We really get to see fascism in action and the darkest look at the treatment of the Bajorans under Cardassian rule, all while being reminded that Ducat's only guilty of caring too much. The crux of it all is that Odo originally found 3 men guilty of an attempt on Ducat's life. The only problem, they were the wrong men, which he'd only come to realize later. We get another great performance from Kurtwood Smith as the stand-in for Odo in this situation and predecessor to his job. And no Odo-centered episode would be complete without a final interaction between he and Kira, as she confronts him on whether or not this was the only incident where he was wrong. He doesn't know. And in his humanoid form during this time, it's a very humanizing thing to admit, even if it doesn't make him feel any better.
Ah, computer. That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Thanks, Major.
And now the conclusion.
Thanks, Major.